Students, you could go ahead and sit. Soon to be graduates, I should say. And let's give one, since we had our hands together, let's give one more round of applause for our bagpiper, Tom. Well, good evening. My name is Jay Coogan. I'm president of Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and I'm really pleased to have all of our friends and family of the graduating students here this evening. So welcome to you all. Today is a day to say thank you. First, today is a day to say thank you to your family for letting you go to MCAD to study art and design. We're grateful you did. And I am sure most families found this to be a big deal. However, I know from talking with parents of our students that for many of you, this too is a day of thanks for finding a place where your student could pursue their passion and develop their skills. It's also a place where they found their own tribe and were more comfortable than they probably were in their high schools, where they might have been singled out for being some weirdo artist. And number one, I'm sure parents tonight are thankful that they finished paying tuition. So thank you. And back to you graduating students. You need to thank your family for sacrificing financially for you to be able to come to MCAD and complete your education, for doing your laundry when you went home, for letting you sleep till noon or probably later when you came home on vacation, and for sending you back to school with a care package. Students, please give your family a round of applause. And today is also a day to say thank you to the faculty and staff of MCAD who every day put your needs first. Thank the department chairs who helped you get your classes, the staff who helped you figure out financial aid, the public safety officer who gave you a ride home late at night, and the faculty who gave you the critique that really made you consider, what am I doing here? Today is the day to thank the person who fixed your computer, helped you find a great internship, who showed you how to use the table saw, how to print a silk screen, to bind a book, and to price your artwork for the art sale. Please give the faculty and staff of MCAD a round of applause and thanks for their guidance and help. Arnold Toynbee, the English economic historian, said, "The supreme accomplishment is to blur the line between work and play." From this perspective, I think artists and designers have the perfect niche. You get to contribute to making the world a better, more visually more interesting place. At the same time, you get to pursue your passion. As an artist and designer, I hope you are thankful to have found a calling and a profession that keeps you excited to get up each day. Isn't it your passion for making that made you head down this path in the first place? Isn't the pleasure of doing what you love that gets you to stay up all night to get it right? Be thankful you have found this combination of work and play. Not everyone does. I feel obliged as president of MCAD to share some advice I've always tried to live by. I'm going to lean on someone who is younger than me who got this piece of advice just right. He also stated this advice at a time when things were looking bleak for him. This someone, who you all will know, is Conan O'Brien. You all know who Conan O'Brien is, right? Good. As you know, he moved from late night to not so late night TV when he had a short run as host of The Tonight Show. On his last night, after having his contract cut short, he said, and I quote, "Nobody in life gets exactly what they thought they were going to get. But if you work really hard and you're kind, amazing things will happen." I am just telling you this because it's the truth. Amazing things will happen. Despite having what seemed like a professional setback, I think he got it right that night. You have worked very hard at MCAD. The senior show up in the galleries is a prime example of the great work that you've done. So start this next phase of your life first by being kind to yourself and have some fun for a few days, a few weeks, and if you can stretch it out, a few months before you settle into the next phase of hard work. And as you strike out in life, I hope you will find the kind of work that will keep you passionate about being an artist and designer. And please don't forget the faculty and friends you made at MCAD. Staying in touch with us is important. We all want to know about your lives and help you continue to succeed. And now it is our turn to say thank you to the graduating class of 2012 for being amazing and enriching our lives at MCAD. Thank you, and I wish you all the best. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Karen Worth, Vice President for Academic Affairs at the college, and also Mary Lazarus, Chair of the Board of Trustees of the college, who will help with presenting degrees to the graduating students. Karen.
First, I would like to introduce you the faculty members who will be assisting in presenting diplomas. Jerry Allen, Chair, Bachelor of Science in Advertising. Bernard Kniff, Chair of the Design Department. Thomas Hawkinson, Chair of the Liberal Arts Department. Howard Quedno, Chair of the Fine Arts Department. And Catherine Turchon, representing the Media Arts Department. Upon recommendation of the faculty and president of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and as approved by the Board of Trustees, I am privileged to present to you the following candidate for the degree of Master of Arts.
The Board of Trustees, by the authority vested in it by the state of Minnesota, and upon recommendation of the faculty and the president of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, confers a degree of Masters of Art with all the honors, rights, and responsibilities upon this candidate.
Kendra Wyckoff Hargens, Master of Arts, Sustainable Design. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm ovation for MCAD's first Master of Arts graduate. Upon recommendation of the faculty and president of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and as approved by the Board of Trustees, I am privileged to present to you the following candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Fine Arts.
The Board of Trustees, by the authority vested in it by the state of Minnesota, and upon recommendation of the faculty and the president of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, confers the degree of Bachelor of Fine Arts with all the honors, rights, and responsibilities upon these candidates.
Jeremy Anderson, illustration. Emily Barron, drawing and painting. Gabriel Cruz Ramirez, furniture design. Brendan Robert Dawson, sculpture. Hannah Bailey DeLon, photography. Galen Ray Fletcher, photography. Alexandra Fritz, Fine Arts Studio. Deborah Garcia, illustration. Daniel Jeffrey Garrettson, filmmaking. Laura Hedrick, web and multimedia environments. Tira Elise Helgeson, illustration. Jesse Lee Hintz, web and multimedia environments. Dakota Haska, drawing and painting. Skylar Huber, drawing and painting. Ryan James Hughes, Fine Art Studio, in absentia. Jamie Eischer, Fine Art Studio, in absentia. Jennifer Jorns, illustration. Jonathan Karen, Fine Art Studio. John Paul Kotz, comic art. Chad Lawrence, Fine Arts Studio. Melissa Luna, comic art. Akshay Malhotra, graphic design. Colin Marks, drawing and painting. Nicole Lynn Mertz, graphic design. Lucas Daniel Morin, animation. Brian Joe Mueller, graphic design, in absentia. Maggie Mary Muldowney, drawing and painting. Avery C. Pierce, animation. Matthew William Reimers, Fine Arts Studio. Natalia Toledo, graphic design. Natalie Wetjen, advertising. Jessica Jade Whitener, print paper book. Alexandra Worry, furniture design. Benjamin West, print paper book. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm ovation for MCAD's Bachelor of Fine Arts graduates. Upon recommendation of the faculty and president of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, and as approved by the Board of Trustees, I am privileged to present to you the following candidates for the degree of Bachelor of Science.
The Board of Trustees, by the authority vested in it by the state of Minnesota, and upon recommendation of the faculty and the president of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, confers a degree of Bachelor of Science with all the honors, rights, and responsibilities upon these candidates.
Caitlin Ann Seide. Jessica Aylward. Jill Marie Blazer. Mackenzie Palmer Vierling Erickson. Emily Jane Keenan. John Andrew Victor Kozak. Joshua Michael Rittenauer. Ivana Sandru, in absentia. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in a warm ovation for MCAD's Bachelor of Science graduates. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Deborah Garcia, who will speak on behalf of her graduating class.
My cheeks really hurt from smiling, so if they twitch, don't pay attention. A most beautiful evening, graduates. Faculty, family, and friends of graduates, it's a privilege to be speaking to you all this evening, especially to my fellow students. I'm sure by now we're all worn and frayed and subsisting on ramen or sheer willpower, caffeine, and a stiff grin. Like me, I'm sure many of you got out of your very last class just a short while ago. Too tired to yawn and so pumped you had to let everybody know it. You may have even boogied in the hallway, just a little. I can also bet you felt a little sad about it too. I was, and still am. I have been for the last week or so counting down the days and marking off the finished finals. I hope I can in some way speak a little bit for everybody here. I may not be cynical enough for some. I may just be too particular. At the end of the day, I'm a video game illustrator, hardly a voice for the multitudes of creative pathways that are being taken by the people in this room today. I can't speak for a lot of us when it comes to our different abilities and interests, our many ways of expressing ourselves. I'm hoping, however, that I can speak for our common thirst for success in life after we leave here this evening as graduates of MCAD. In one way or another, we are all concerned about success and making it. We've all been asked in a multitude of times in our sophomore seminars, our pro-pracs, at just about every turn to think about success and what it means to us, how we define it so that we may attain it, whether it be a corporate design position or making art without compromising yourself, or somehow finding happiness and keeping it however you can. I've never been asked that question so many times in my life. I've never been asked to face the possibility of failure so much. It scared me just as often as it touched me that there were people who cared so much to ask us all to confront this question. And a lot of the time, I think, we question whether our idea of success was worthy. We might have looked at someone's interpretation of a happy future as an artist as inferior to our own. We might have felt scorned by someone else whose aspirations seemed to turn up their nose as to what we defined as success. Who had the best idea of what a good dream was? Who was being realistic? Who was being naive? Who had the best goals? Making more money? Making more fame? Going the deepest underground? Never accepting a dime for your art? I want to stand before you all and tell you that whatever that idea is to you of happiness, of fulfillment, of success, the definition that is in your mind is a perfect thing, and beautiful, and worthy beyond words. We've all had to be risk takers in one way or another to get here, and we are every one of us valuable. Believe me or don't, but I would encourage everyone here not to sell themselves short. Even on our worst days, when we felt useless at our craft, or that we weren't good enough to be taken seriously, or strong enough to make our names anywhere in the world, I know we are always worthy. We've all had long journeys to get here. Late days, late nights, days without sleep, carpal tunnel, some fairly vivid hallucinations at 4 a.m, a good cry here and there. I know I have. How can we look back at that and not recognize the kind of amazing human beings that it made us? That we went through it and got out the other side. I've definitely had my own perilous journey here. I've had so many scrapes and falls, and I didn't and couldn't do it on my own. There are so many remarkable people to be found here. I have made so many beautiful friends. I got to know some amazing professors and instructors who cared. I try to thank all of them, but I don't think I could have said it enough. I have a few in mind that really guided me, took an interest in my work, and pushed me those times I didn't feel worthy, and made me believe that I could have a career and a life doing exactly what I wanted. I believe that they know who they are. I'm proud to thank my wonderful parents, who believed from the beginning that my going to art school was as glamorous and prestigious as going to law school or becoming a doctor. From when I was a little girl drawing foxes in the meadow, they have never faltered from the belief that I would be a famous artist and buy them that opulent lake house and maybe a 50-foot yacht for my dad. We're leaving our home here and going out into the world to make life up as we go along. I remember not so long ago being terrified of the idea of leaving the education system altogether. Many of us have been students and have been a part of it our entire lives. We've thought and breathed for so long as students, waiting for the next assignment, the next problem, or the next opportunity. It was only recently that I felt a sense of restlessness. That's not uncommon, I think. I feel we finally reached that point where the idea of leaving the nest never seemed more irrevocably right. I hope that we all remember each other. I hope we had fun and found another home here for a little while. I know that in the future I will always remember this place as another kind of home I always had, that I could return to and feel always welcome. Congratulations, graduates. I know we will all go out to make great art and beautiful changes. Thank you.
Deborah, thank you for a really wonderful speech, very moving, and I think really real for everybody sitting here. And I also want to say thank you to her parents for recognizing that the arts are just as powerful as being a lawyer or a doctor or whatever else that society values. And now for our commencement speaker. I was just a warm-up act, and so was Deborah. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce Neil Cuthbert. Neil Cuthbert is Vice President for Program at the McKnight Foundation and oversees a grant-making budget of over $90 million that supports a variety of initiatives both locally and globally. Cuthbert joined McKnight in 1991 as the Foundation's Fine Arts Program Officer and was named Program Director in 2000. Since the Foundation's formal arts program began in 1980, McKnight's Board of Directors has committed over $169 million to support arts organizations and artists in Minnesota. Wow. McKnight is the state's largest private funder of the arts. I think we should applaud them for their support of the arts and also countless MCAD people who have won fellowships. In addition to managing McKnight's arts grant making, Cuthbert in recent years developed the report A New Angle, Cultural Development in the Suburbs, and its follow-up, You Are Here, Bright Stars, an examination of the impact of the arts on rural communities. In collaboration with the Walker Arts Center, he also led the development of the artist website, mnartists.org. If you haven't been on it, it's a great repository of fabulous representation of the artists who work here in Minnesota. Prior to his work at McKnight, Cuthbert was director and publisher of the monthly art and cultural journal Art Paper and a planner at the Metropolitan Council in both its arts and housing programs. He is also an exhibited visual artist and has been published as a critical writer and commentator both locally and nationally. Cuthbert holds a Bachelor of Arts degree in art history from the University of Michigan. Please welcome Neil Cuthbert.
Thank you, Jay. Good evening, everyone. And Deborah, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for those remarks. First off, I have to say congratulations to all of the graduates for your hard work, perseverance, and accomplishments. This is no small task. I remember it, or sort of remember it, but it's a big day, and it represents a lot of work on your part. After college, after my own college graduation, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, and it was during a time when that town was collapsing socially and economically, and I city shopped for a couple of years, and I ended up moving here because of the arts community. I felt like it was a place that I could get involved with the arts and I could make things happen, and that's certainly something that was true in my life. As Jay mentioned, I have a background as a visual artist and a writer, and I used to be the publisher of a magazine called Art Paper, along with there's a MCAD faculty member here, a guy named Vince Leo. We met and worked on that together. And it was this really interesting cultural critical journal. And one of the things I learned back then was the profound importance of local culture, seen and considered and thought about in the context of national and international culture and international forces. So it was the local and the global. That combination was a very profound and important combination and thinking for us back then. So what I want to do with the few minutes that I have here is I want to tell a couple of stories that represent, in my experience, the power that creative individuals can have on lives of communities and economies. And then I have a brief little recollection about time. And then I just want to share something that I deeply believe in about culture and about this place, the upper Midwest, Minnesota, the Twin Cities, that hopefully will tie all these remarks together in just a few minutes. The first story is about a guy named John Davis. He was a graduate of MCAD in, I think, the late 80s, an artist. After he graduated, he had the good fortune, or poor fortune, of delivering pizzas for a while. He was robbed 2 times in one day and decided he needed to move. And he had saved some money and decided he wanted to buy a farm. And he bought a farm in this little community called New York Mills, Minnesota. It's about 180 miles northwest of the cities, town of about 800 or 900 people. And so John bought this abandoned farm up there. And New York Mills was one of these towns that you see, that you particularly saw, you still see in some areas of rural Minnesota and rural United States. The downtown is basically folding up. You know, it was kind of a dying town. So John moved up there, and he started supporting himself by painting houses. And he eventually got to know everybody in town because it wasn't a very big town. And he got known as this quiet, industrious, hardworking, quiet, serious young man. And, everybody liked him. He kind of fit into the community. Well, John had this farm and a barn and a few other buildings, and he started bringing artists in. He started offering the barn up as a studio and as a retreat for artists. And the only thing that they needed to do was to do some kind of residency work in the local school or in the senior center. And so John started bringing artists in, and he would advertise through different networks. And oddly and interestingly, the artists that he were bringing in they were artists that would come in and be working at the Walker, and they would go up to New York Mills to do like a month-long residency or something like that up there. And because John had been working as a house painter and knew everybody in town, the normal suspicion that a lot of artists and creative people are met with in rural communities and even metropolitan communities wasn't there, because these were friends of John's, and the suspicion wasn't there, the trust was there. And soon there was this regular stream of artists coming into this little town of 800 people. And a local business person who had one of these dying buildings on Main Street donated this abandoned building to John and say, hey, why don't you make an art center here? John had, at that point in time, been showing up for the local coffee donut clutch with kind of the town group of community leaders. And over the course of a couple of years, this abandoned building on Main Street was renovated and turned into the New York Mills Regional Cultural Center. The town, because everybody got involved with it, had a kind of a rebirth of its identity. It had a new thought about what it could be. It wasn't a dying rural community anymore. It had a new view. Suddenly, bed and breakfast started locating there. They created a sculpture park. They started having philosophy contests and film festivals and music festivals, and new businesses moved into town. The downtown, rather than folding up and moving out to Highway 10, what people were investing in and moving into town. The town is now maybe closer to 1,000 people, still a small town, but it was this incredible story of what one creative person, what one person could do, and kind of tipped this community, tipped the whole economy of this community. The second story is about Duluth. And Duluth, ever since I've lived in Minnesota, I found Duluth to be a really interesting town, in part maybe because when I first moved here, it reminded me a little bit of Detroit. It was kind of a collapsed mining town. The industry was kind of failing. It was a very interesting scenic port town. It felt kind of tired. But what's happened there over the last 10 or 15 years is, well, there was always an interesting core of artists up in the North Shore and in Minnesota and up in Duluth, musicians and a lot of artists who were kind of living out in the woods and would come into town and show stuff. But over the last 10 or 15 years, there's been this scene that's developed. And it's in part fueled by visual artists, but in part fueled by musicians, where people started staying in Duluth. People started staying in the town. Kind of a really interesting music scene developed. A couple of bands, Low and Black Eyed Snakes and stuff like that, they started to kind of create this scene. The Homegrown Music Festival started, the Dylan Music Festival started, and creative people started staying in Duluth. And so there's artists, musicians, and they created kind of a scene, and so other creative people, artisans, sausage makers, brewers, chefs, cooks, bakers, they all started staying in town, and suddenly, over the course of a decade or so, collectively, these artists changed the town. They changed Duluth's self-image, they changed its culture, they changed its scene, and more importantly, they changed its economy. I mean, is it still hard to live as an artist in Duluth? Absolutely. But is it easier and more interesting than it was 10 years ago? Absolutely. The reason I'm talking about these towns, New York Mills and Duluth, is sometimes it's easier, and I've felt it's sometimes easier to see the impact and the ability that creative people have to make things happen in smaller communities. Is this true in the Twin Cities? It's absolutely true in the Twin Cities. While the Minneapolis warehouse scene of the 1980s was very groovy, and the new French bar was the epicenter of all things cool. The breadth and depth and opportunity in today's broad visual arts creative community dwarfs it. It absolutely dwarfs it. There's no comparison at all. There's more market interaction. There's still a bit of a frontier. All of this region is still a bit of a frontier, but that's why you can make things happen here. That's one of the things that makes it really interesting here. So I want to tell you one little quick observation about time. My wife is from Winona, Minnesota, which is a river town about 120 miles south. And a family friend kind of was the archetypal small town lawyer, a guy named Rip Streeter. I love his name, always loved his name, great guy. And as a young man, he worked on the barges along the Mississippi. And that took him to the lake freighters in the Great Lakes, which took him to working the docks on the East Coast. And Rip loved to tell the story about an old guy he worked with whose, I think, grandfather must have been, had fought in the Napoleonic Wars. And Rip would come up to you, particularly, maybe after a drink or two, and he would come up to you and say, I shook the hand of someone who shook the hand of someone who fought in the Napoleonic Wars. And he'd have his hand in your hand. And you kind of go, holy smokes. And I had this sense of time collapsing. And suddenly, in Rip Streeter's hand, in my hand, was this distant or seemingly distant past. And it made me remember that when I was a kid, so this is, 50 years ago, we used to have Veterans Day parades. And Veterans Day parades used to be kind of a big thing because we had 3 wars that had happened. And when I was really young, there was still a fairly large contingent of World War I soldiers, these guys in their Johnny Boy suits. And they were old guys even when I was a kid. And I remember talking with them, with one of them one year when I was little. And this guy, this old guy, dressed in his World War I suit, and I don't remember if it was his grandfather or great uncle, but somebody who was a direct, relative of his that he knew and lived with, had fought in the Civil War. And I remember even as a kid, just like this Rip Streeter story with the Napoleonic Wars, I remember, time collapsing, and suddenly I'm talking with this guy and shaking his hand, and suddenly the Civil War was a close event, and a living participant was just a handshake away. And so why am I talking about time? I'm talking about time because it leads me to something that I believe really deeply about our culture in this place. And one of the main things that I believe in is that we live in a very young country. And we live in a very young country with a very young culture that is still forming and is still being fought over and is still being wrought. And we here in the Twin Cities, developed as we are still a bit of a frontier. A lot of America is still a bit of a frontier. And you graduates here, you creative people, you artists, are crucial people, crucial forces, crucial individuals who are actually, in my view, kind of historic forces that are helping shape this. In my mind, there's a American culture that is being shaped right now. The museums, the orchestras, the operas, all great, were all created to be representations and expressions for the immigrants who came to America, and they were trying to make this new American place look more familiar. They wanted it to look like home. They wanted it to look like Europe. And that's what people do with culture. They carry it around with them. But around these great institutions, and sometimes with them, sometimes through them, sometimes in spite of them, sometimes over them, the culture that is emerging as this American culture, it's happening. It's being forged. The American culture that is a handshake away from you in the future is happening now, by you, with your blood, with your sweat, with your dollars, with your time, with your laughter, with your tears. And in my view, this is important and this is historic, And Deborah, you used this phrase, and it's a phrase I wrote. One of the things that's important for you to know is to not undersell the meaning and the importance of what you're doing and what you're participating in. You, the individual you, the collective us, we cannot see, anticipate, or even know all of the impacts the work you're doing is having. You're a cultural force whose impact is in changed lives, changed realities, changed cultures, changed history, and changed economies. So, the creative scene that's around us is also the foundation of the economy that is before us. And with each passing year, this economy, this culture gains new strength and new momentum. That's what you're a part of. That's what you have the opportunity to create and participate in. And that's why, in my mind, you're so damn lucky coming out of this institution with the skills you have and the skills you don't even know you have. That's the thing that's before you. You come out of here with a great set of skills, a great set of experiences, but there's stuff that you know that you don't even know you know. And believe me, that's going to be really cool having that unfold in your lives. And it's such a great time in our region's history and our nation's history right now. You have an unbelievable history, an unbelievable ability to make things happen. Like in New York Mills, like in Duluth, like here. Because of your training, because of the cultural and business infrastructure that's here, because of the basic belief in the arts and artists and creative culture that's here, and because this place is still something of a frontier. You can take advantage of it. So, I congratulate you, and from the bottom of my heart, and I mean this totally sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, I wish you the very best for your unfolding lives and your unfolding careers. Amen.
Well, I just want to say, Neil, thank you very much for exhorting our students to realize the power that they have to change the world. That's part of our mission here, is to make sure that students feel they have the skills and abilities to go out and do that. And I should also mention that John Davis, who Neil mentioned, helped transform New York Mills, also helped transform another town in Minnesota called Lanesboro into an arts and culture center as well. So he's wrought change on two communities here that's been quite profound. And thinking of people who have wrought change and had a huge impact on communities, there's somebody who's not really graduating tonight, but, you know, kind of graduating or transitioning tonight. And that person has had a huge impact on the college. And in recognition of her impact, I wanted to be sure that we recognized her here tonight and let her know that the Board of Trustees has recognized her as well. At the trustee meeting this week, the trustees passed a resolution which I'd like to read to you. Whereas Susan Kalmanson has served on the staff of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design for the past 22 years, and Susan Kalmanson has provided outstanding leadership and guidance to students of MCAD by serving as an academic advisor and overseeing the Department of Student Affairs. And in addition to the support and encouragement that Susan has provided the students of MCAD, she has also generously created a fully endowed scholarship fund at the college to assist students in need. And Susan Kalmanson has been a fierce advocate for students and an unyielding supporter of the college. Now, therefore, be it resolved that upon recommendation of President Coogan, that would be me, and the faculty and staff of the Minneapolis College of Art and Design, the Board of Trustees hereby recognizes Susan Commencement for her distinguished service to the college and its students. And it's Susan, if you'd come down, we also have a gift from the Board of Trustees for you as well.
Thank you. Two for Clem to toss. Thank you, students. Thank you, Jerry.
You're welcome. Thank you, Susan. So before we say last congratulations to all the students who have just graduated, I just want to invite everyone to the commencement exhibition and reception here in the main building. There's food up on the second floor, I believe. And if you haven't seen the artwork of the students who are graduating, please take a look at that. Also at 8 o'clock, there will be animation and film screenings that will take place in the auditorium. So I invite all of you to attend those screenings as well. And if you would wait until the stage group exits the auditorium before all of the audience exits, that would be much appreciated. So let's give a last round of applause to our graduating students of the fall of 2012.